So our lesson on Pythagorean theorem is going to have a little bit of a twist from what we normally would see with Pythagorean theorem. Now I know that all of you remember Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and it applies to right triangles. And the a and the b are the two legs of the triangle, and the c is the hypotenuse. Now when we look at example 1, we're going to label the legs of the triangle as the square root of 10 and the square root of 18. And the question is, how big is the hypotenuse? Well, when we set up Pythagorean theorem, we take the leg and we're going to square it, plus the other leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. Now when you square a square root, this is atypical of a Pythagorean theorem problem, they just end up canceling each other out. So you get a 10, and then same thing happens here, plus an 18 equals c squared. 10 plus 18 is 28. Equals c squared. And when you square root both sides, if you try typing that on your calculator, you're going to get an answer that's a decimal. Now the ACT does not accept decimals, so you're going to have to use your breaking down square root techniques from Algebra 2 and say the biggest perfect square that goes into 28 is a 4, so 28 is really a 4 times 7. And the square root of 4 is really a 2, so your answer is 2 square roots of 7. These answers don't match this, so I think I copied the wrong answers. Sorry about that. So go down and find the answers that are supposed to match, and the answer should be 2 square roots of 7. Let's look at example 2. A is the square root of 20. B, they don't tell us this time, and this time they do tell us the hypotenuse is square root of 65. So we're still going to set up Pythagorean theorem, except this time we don't know the second leg. Okay, similar twist on this problem. When we square a square root, they end up canceling each other out, so you get 20 plus b squared equals 65. When you subtract the 20 over, you get b squared equals 45. And again, if you type this on your calculator, you're going to find a decimal answer, which is not appropriate for the ACT. So you're going to have to use your breaking down radicals technique, and the biggest perfect square that goes into 45 is 9. So 45 is the square root of 9 times the square root of 5, or 3 square roots of 5, which is answer D. Now, if you are not familiar with how to break down radicals, or you panic in the middle of the test, it's not the end of the world. You would go ahead and type the square root of 45 on your calculator, and then you would go ahead and type the different answer choices, and you would do what's called a decimal match. One of them is going to have the same decimal, and that's your correct answer. Now obviously that's going to take you a little bit of time, but it's better than getting the question wrong. Okay, example 3. Be careful on this one. When you square the first leg, 3 square roots of 2. It's a little more complicated than what we just saw. And then we're going to square the square root of 22, and we're going to find the hypotenuse, which is x. Now, squaring a 3 times the square root of 2. You're going to square the 3, which is a 9, and then when you square the square root of 2, that becomes a 2. So this is really just a 9 times 2, which will change to an 18 in a second. The square root of 22 squared is still 22. So we've got 18 plus 22 equals x squared. So let's see, that's 40 equals x squared. And breaking down 40, let's see, the biggest perfect square that divides into 40 is 4. So it's really the square root of 4 times square root of 10. And that reduces to 2 square roots of 10. Again, if you're not familiar with breaking down the radicals, you're going to have to do a decimal match. That is going to take you more time, but it's better than getting it wrong. Now, if you go to your next worksheet, which you may or may not have, so you might need to stop the presentation here, otherwise keep going. The worksheet that's titled Decimals and Radicals Practice. It's more of the same. They give you the two legs in the first two problems, and they want you to find the hypotenuse. So we've got the square root of 24, and then the square root of 8, and then here's the hypotenuse. So if I go ahead and I square the square root of 24, and I square the square root of 8, it should come out to c squared. So 24 plus 8 equals c squared. And let's see, that's 32 equals c squared. The biggest perfect square that divides into 32 is actually a 16. Think bigger than 4. A lot of people just say 4. It's 16 times 2. So that would be 4 square roots of 2. Letter B. Number 2, I'm going to go ahead and set up for you. We have the square root of 30 as one of the legs, except we don't know the second leg, and it's supposed to equal the square root of 78 squared. So squaring the square root of 30, you get 30 plus b squared equals 78. We're going to subtract the 30 over. B squared equals 48, and again, you got to break down 48. Biggest perfect square that goes into 48 is 16. It's really the 16 times 3. So B is 4 square roots of 3. I'm going to go ahead and skip examples 3 and 4. I want you to do those on your own. Same thing with 5 and 6. And I want to move to number 7. 7 has a leg of 4 square roots of 3. And we're going to square it. Plus the square root of 60 squared has to equal x squared. Now 4 square roots of 3 squared. We're going to square the 4, and we're also going to square the square root of 3. So 4 squared is 16. Square root of 3 squared is just a 3. So that's really going to be a 16 times 3. And then this becomes us just plus 60. So let's see here. 16 times 3 is 48. Alright, getting some big numbers here. So we have 108 equals x squared. Now, you have a calculator, so I don't feel too bad for you. Start typing some things on your calculator, see which one is going to break down into 108. And let's see, I'm actually going to grab my calculator. I think 108 is divisible by 36, which is a perfect square. It is. So 108 is really the square root of 36 times 3, which gives us the answer of 6 square roots of 3. Alright, we're going to let you go ahead and finish the rest of the worksheet. Good luck.